Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. As the entire nation celebrated Eid Miladun-Nabi, the 12th of Rabiul Awal on a Friday, a procession in the celebration connection was targeted by a bomb blast in Mastung area of Balochistan that resulted in the loss of life of over 50 people, including a police officer, as well as dozens of others were injured as a result of this bomb blast. A second bomb attack in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Hangu, targeting a police station mosque, resulted in the loss of life of 5 people, also injuring over a dozen people. On Thursday, just a day before Friday, the occasion of Eid Miladun-Nabi, 5 army soldiers embraced martyrdom during an operation against the terrorists in Yob area of Balochistan. Later on, we saw Chief of Army Staff General Syed Asim Munir visited Quetta and was briefed on the terrorist incidents in both Yob, also in Mastung. Paying tribute to the martyrs, the Army Chief said, let me quote him, "Such incidents of terrorism on 12th of Rabiul Awal depict the ill intent of Khawarij, the defectors from religious mainstream who have the backing of the state sponsorship of terrorism, and the military operations would continue unabated against the terrorists," unquote. Meanwhile, the caretaker Interior Minister Mr. Sarfraz Bukti has hinted at the involvement of India's intelligence agency research and analysis wing, which is commonly known as RAW, in the recent terrorist attacks that happened in Balochistan. The Interior Minister has also vowed to pursue the terrorists to their dens and said that the policy of appeasement would not happen again. Likewise, we have seen Caretaker Information Minister of Balochistan, Mr. Jan Achakzai, has declared an all-out war against the terrorists, saying enough is enough. In another major development, we have seen regional countries have urged the interim Afghan authorities to dismantle, eliminate and prevent placement of all sorts of terrorist groups based in Afghanistan, and this particular call to the interim Afghan authorities was given at the end of the Moscow format mood that was held in the Kazan city of Russia. We'll be taking these matters up for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Attiq Rehman, his expert international relations. Dr. Attiq, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Lieutenant General retired Moinuddin Haider, his former Federal Interior Minister. General Moinuddin Haider, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, General Moin. Now, this particular incident, let's specifically talk about the incident that happened in Mastung, a procession in connection to the celebrations of Eid Miladun-Nabi was being taken out, and it was targeted with a bomb blast. What sort of a mentality and a mindset is at work when it comes to the people who are targeting the processions on such religious occasions?
This question is to me?
General Moin, yes, please go ahead. General Moin, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please go ahead. What sort of a mindset and a mentality do you think is at work when people target the processions taken out in religious celebrations, specifically when we talk about this Rabiul Awal procession on Friday in Mastung?
Yes, I think this history of terrorism, and especially of suicide bombers attacking crowds, has been, and attacking mosques and other congregations, has been going on, I think, for 20-30 years now. And there were many doubts in Pakistan, especially in the religious circles, that a Muslim cannot attack a mosque, that a Muslim cannot attack a procession which is being held for our dear Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that he cannot attack this Imam Barga, and they cannot attack this But over the years, the mask from these terrorists has come out, and we have come to know that they are very much Muslims. They may call themselves Muslims, and they are Muslims because they say so, but their actions have nothing to do with Islam. And many such groups have risen up in Pakistan. There was one famous group of Uzbekistan freedom movement. They were sitting in our Fatah, but also destabilizing Pakistan, TTP, and Daesh, and Al Qaeda, and many others. Now, all these people are in somebody's pay. Somebody guides them. Somebody gives them money to do this. I mean, otherwise, they have no business to indulge in such a thing. And we thought that, after the eviction of the NATO and American forces from Afghanistan, Pakistan will have a sigh of relief and Afghanistan will rein in these TTP and other elements who cross the fence and attack targets in Pakistan. If you notice, all the trouble mostly which is taking place from last several weeks and months are those regions adjoining the Pak-Afghan border. It may be Mastung, it may be Fata, it may be Bannu and other areas. Secondly, uh, we have approached Afghanistan several times that we are a brother country and we have always helped you. We are host to your several million refugees. They say that they will rein in the TTP. They say, first of all, that you speak to them and you decide with them. But I am told, I read in the newspaper, I don't know how authentic that news is, that they had recently arrested 200 people from TTP whom they suspected that they crossed border into Pakistan and attack and come back. So I do not know, somebody should follow up, our ambassador or somebody on this news. Secondly, there is no doubt that all those countries who want to destabilize Pakistan for their vested interests, somebody doesn't want development here, no dams should be made. They attack our engineers who work on these dams. Somebody is interested that CPEC should not take roots here and should not, and development should not be happening through CPEC. And you have seen recently an ambassador of a country going there and saying that we will help you in this development. And they keep giving the statement, but I'm not sure what help they're giving on the ground. But if you see the history in the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, elsewhere, Afghanistan, the attacking forces had least casualties. And most of the casualties were of it was not any action, were many casualties because of that. Most of the casualties were because of these groups, which of course are being paid, nurtured, trained, recruited by vested powers to destabilize and the countries of their choice and push their international agenda. That is why these people, they have all the weapons, they have all the guidance, they know where to go and which place. I think they tell you the maximum crowd is collected. So I have seen one or two clips on the social media in which they have cut the Pak-Afghan border fence, and in about 20s, 30s, 40s, these people armed with weapons are entering into Pakistan. Now, for what purpose? They're bringing their arms and they're coming because whole of the fence cannot be policed. So we have to find ways and means wherever by patrolling we find our fences been cut, we have to repair it, and then we have to cover it, and we have to make one or two good examples. Should be shot dead. No second thoughts about it. It should be done by ground forces, by mobile forces, even armed helicopter. We should teach them a lesson that this is international border, it has to be respected, and you cannot cross it illegally with automatic weapons, because we know the purpose of these weapons, why you are entering Pakistan. It is as simple as that. I think the time has come that we have to take strong action against these people through good intelligence-based operations. We cannot let the situation slip out of our hands.
Right. General Moin, your point is well taken. I'll come back to you to talk more about the points that you've just mentioned. Let me bring in Dr. Attiq into the discussion also. Dr. Attiq, we have seen as per some media reports, the banned Taliban Pakistan, which has been involved in the recent wave of terrorist activities in Pakistan, it has distanced itself from this very particular incident that happened in Mastung. What does that mean to you?
Thank you so much. You just pointed out a very serious question. Basically, if we see the post US withdrawal from Afghanistan, there was a very much, I mean, you say celebrations among the people. I mean, at the governmental level, at the societal level, without understanding the cost or the security challenges we are going to face. No doubt TTP again is becoming a challenge, but on the other hand we should not ignore the factors which supported TTP against Pakistan. I mean, the withdrawal of the US, that wasn't a good news for the India, and the Indian involvement, their heavy investments, everything was a very sad news for them. And now how can we expect that they will be sit aside and will see Pakistan having a cooperative and multi-dimensional ties with Afghanistan? Definitely they will intervene, and they will I mean, support more elements. And presently TTP is a threat, but in future they will augment, the Indian efforts will be augmented in future, and we need to adopt a very serious approach. I mean, on the one hand, we are very much happy having cooperative ties with Afghanistan, and we are inviting the Afghan government, like the OIC, the special session of OIC. We just invited them, and we were the first who provided them the international table to talk about them, to highlight their issue, the humanitarian issue. We are the one. But on the other hand, we just underestimated Indian involvement, and the Indian involvement is there. And the recent attacks, definitely the recent act, especially on a special day, Rabiul Awwal, Eid Miladul Nabi, the Muslim celebration, that is clear indication that General Sahab very rightly highlighted that Muslim cannot do this thing. It is very pertinent to understand that the Indian involvement is there. And I was just in last 3 or 4 months, I was just analyzing the whole situation from the Jadawala incident, then after that this incident. So we need to accept that again we are going towards the unacceptable security challenges, very serious security challenges.
Okay, that is what the caretaker Interior Minister Mr. Sarfraz Bugti has also mentioned, hinted at the involvement, the possible involvement after the probe is done regarding this specific incident. But of course there had been irrefutable evidence regarding India's state sponsorship of terrorism in various parts of the country. When we talk about Balochistan in particular, solid evidence and the dossiers regarding those have also been shared with the international community. So if that much of Indian involvement in sabotage and espionage and terrorist activities over here in Pakistan is there, for how long Pakistan would continue to pay that price at the altar of India's state sponsorship of terrorism? Why do you think the international community, rather than only condemning the incidents of such sort, isn't taking a concrete action?
The situation is very clear. The international system, there is a very clear transformation from the geostrategic interest to the geo-economy. And India is an emerging economy. The great powers or the power centers or the countries having very powerful status in the world politics, they are very much active in having their cooperative ties in economic terms with India. So we need to understand the international community will not undermine their economic and the strategic interest with India only because of Pakistan.
We understand there might be economic interests of the international community and the major powers which are connected with India. What about the role of the United Nations and its organ that is known as the United Nations Security Council, the aim and the ambition of which is to preserve the international and the global security and stability?
United Nations is there. The Security Council is very much active in taking the action for the peace and the stability of the system across the globe. But on the other hand, the countries are having their interest. So they cannot violate their interest. And the international forum, the multilateral arrangements of the international community, they are very active in just making their statement, their resolutions. I mean, you can see in the issue of Kashmir, in Kashmir, what we are plebiscite. Still, UN is there passing the resolutions. They are very much serious in taking action, but the actions are only in papers. So we cannot expect more from the international institutions.
Okay, so if we try to differentiate, when we specifically talk about a major power, let's say it be the United States or any other Western country, it has got its own interest, the national interest to pursue, right? In the pursuance of those national interests, it might have some economic relations or good relations or friendly relations with a certain specific country, which is found repeatedly involved in state sponsorship of terrorism. But when that particular country becomes a part of an international organization, don't you think the responsibility by becoming the member of that international organization, that supersedes or that takes a primacy as compared to their own national interest?
Yep. A very good example is the Security Council's veto politics. The Security Council, United Nations Security Council, what they are doing? The 5 permanent members, they are using their veto power in order to just secure their own position, influential position in the world. So in international institutions, no doubt the countries are participating, they are very much active, but on the other hand, no one is willing to just sacrifice their interest. So that's why they are participating in the international organization, I mean the multilateral forums, but without taking practical pragmatic approach about the system. So definitely they will not undermine their interest while passing the resolution or discussing the issues like the Kashmir issue, like the Palestinian issues there. So in the case of India, the majority of the states in the United Nations, they are very much cooperative with India. So they are increasing their strategic and their economic engagement with India. And presently we have started witnessing a new thing. I was reading in the literature, a couple of books started discussion on the new framework of Indian foreign policy, that is a minilateralism. So between the bilateral and the multilateral frameworks, India has started creating a new way for its standing in the world, that is a minilateral. They have signed the COAS.
To take your detailed view regarding this particular thing you've just mentioned, let me go back to General Moinuddin, Haider. General Amin, when you mentioned a couple of points earlier in your take, the second was that the interim Afghan authorities, the Afghan Taliban, want Pakistan to talk with the banned Taliban Pakistan. Why do you think the Afghan authorities repeatedly want Pakistan to engage and talk or negotiate with the banned Taliban Pakistan? What sort of an interest does it serve to the Afghan Taliban?
Yes. Before I answer this question, I'd like to go back about the previous question. The nation is supposed to protect the rights of weaker countries and do justice amongst them and to save them from the tyranny of superpowers and big powers. But in this duty, I'm afraid they have not done so well. They have tried in many places. There are, of course, successes in stopping bloodshed. But most obvious to the world is Israel and Palestine problem, where many resolutions have been passed, and second is Kashmir. And third, this Bosnia-Herzegovina, in the heart of Europe, in the 20th century, 21st century, 22nd, in the heart of Europe in this modern age, the massacres which took place, the rape which took place, the killings which took place, United Nations could prevent it, didn't want to prevent it. And secondly, the destruction of many Muslim countries, like Libya, like Iraq, like Afghanistan. So you have seen that their role they could not play to stop this destruction of these countries. Now they are devastated countries, basically all of these countries, which I have named. Now, secondly, big powers have their own interest and they have their own game plan. But as far as we mentioned about India, you can see that India, the way it is treating its minorities, its Sikh population, its Muslim population, its Christian population, its own Hindu Dalit populations, lower caste. And now you have seen that in the game of World Cup cricket, they gave visas to our cricket team on the very last day. And now many journalists are wanting to go there. Many cricket lovers want to go and see those matches. They are not getting visas. Secondly, now I am not, giving my assessment or my opinion. I'm Indian National Security Advisor. He said all these Daesh and all these TTP and all these, they're all purchasable commodities. So it is very easy for them that if somebody is giving them 20 crores to destabilize something, I can give them 30 crores and they'll work for me. I mean, he's on record saying all this. I've heard myself. So from this, you can see their design. And now there is this case of killing the Sikh leader in Canada, with the row between Canada and India going on. But they have killed another Sikh leader, and they have killed a Sikh leader in Lahore. And now the other day in Karachi, only yesterday, they have killed this Lashkar-e-Tayyaba, which is no more active. They have closed down, we have closed down their banks and their training areas and their base, everything is closed down. And they're no more taking part in any jihad. But they murdered their leader. Yesterday, this leader was murdered here. So, I mean, you can see, and the greatest proof that India keeps meddling in our affairs and promotes terrorism is through Collusion, who said that my task was to destabilize Baluchistan and Karachi. So, from this, we can guess this trouble which is going on, we will fight it, we will neutralize it, we will try to bring peace, but it will not come in an easy way. India and other interested parties will continue to play their game, and we have to prevent these things happening by taking strict measures now, no half-hearted compromises. This is my suggestion.
Right, Janaab Moin, let me bring in Mr. Ziaur Rehman. He has joined us on the phone line, senior journalist. Mr. Ziaur Rehman, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, specifically talking about India's involvement in state sponsorship of terrorism, what do you think, what ideally happens to be the responsibility of the United Nations Security Council in particular, given the fact whenever we talk about the international community's responsibility in this regard, we often get to hear that the major powers have got their economic or strategic interests associated with India, but when they become the member of an international organization of ranks of United Nations, don't you think the approach of those major powers should shift towards a more responsible approach?
Yes, thank you very much. You are right that we cannot ignore the neighboring countries' involvement in the terrorism, whether it is India, whether it is Afghanistan. If you see the recent attack in Maston, okay, in which they have basically targeted these Eid al-Nabi procession, and so far no one has claimed the responsibility. Police and experts linked that Daesh can be behind it, but it didn't take responsibility despite passage of 24 hours. They normally get response of any attack in 24 hours. On the other hand, TTP say we are not linked with these attacks. So in this case, who then carry out attack in Mastong? So it's a thing that we know that in Baluchistan there is more involvement of the foreign hands, particularly in the previous government in Afghanistan. We have seen the support to the Baluch insurgent groups, and now these attacks happen in the heart of Baluchistan in Mastong. So yeah.
Okay, so as you also mentioned that Band Taliban Pakistan has distanced itself, didn't take the responsibility of this particular incident that happened in Mastung. No other terrorist group has claimed the responsibility of it. That naturally makes us think that who is behind it. Earlier, as Mr. Sarfraz Bukti says that recent terrorist attacks in Balochistan, there was India's involvement in it. So when we talk about the responsibility that has been claimed by the IS Khorasan also recently of a number of attacks in Pakistan, and there was a recent UN report regarding the nexus or Band Taliban Pakistan providing the NATO caliber weapons to ISK. Do you think this particular nexus, one group operating at one time and the other backing away from it, is making more of a challenge for the security apparatus here in Pakistan?
Yeah, exactly. After the fall of Kabul in August 2021, in this past 2 years, we have seen that on one hand, Taliban freed most of the TTP prisoners from the jail. Second, we have seen they have given the US left weapons to the TTP and other militant groups. Okay. And third is they are still providing sanctuaries to TTP and other militants. So one thing is that the UN Security Council report also indicates that in these rough land of Afghanistan, there is more collaboration going on between the militant outfit. It could be Al-Qaeda, it is TTP and other outfit. And also, it also indicated that some of the groups are linked with the ISK, IS Khorasan. So so one thing is, it was like now in Afghanistan, because there's a very rough land. So who are basically IS Khorasan? It is basically mainly the former TTP commanders who are now part of the ISK. They were from Bajor and they're from Police Agency, which in 2015, which they were angry with the TTP leadership at that time, and now they become ISK. Issue is now entire responsibility lies on the Taliban leadership in Kabul, which basically signed in Doha agreement that we will not allow any foreign militant to operate on their land. On the one hand, we have seen that Islamabad has been showing their concern to Taliban administration. Okay. On the other hand, we have seen that China and Uzbekistan, other Central Asian countries, they're also showing their concern that ETIM and IMU are there. And we have also seen that on a daily basis, there are cross-border attacks in Chatral, in Job. So issue is that Afghan Taliban, I don't know that because these things, when we're not taking action against TTP, it means you are basically helping them. So, and Pakistan knows it, and Pakistan have sent harsh messages to the Taliban administration that we can do anything to protect our land. So yeah, it is a very complex situation. Yeah.
Right, Mr. Ziaur Rahman, one last question. As you already mentioned, now this particular collusion or the nexus between the Band Taliban Pakistan and the ISK. Now, we've seen the Moscow format moot in Kazan in Russia. There was a joint declaration. It has urged the interim Afghan authorities to take concrete measures, eliminate and also prevent placement of all sorts of terrorist groups. At the same time, this particular declaration, the regional countries have appreciated the interim Afghan authorities for taking action specifically against the ISK. Now, when the Afghan Taliban can take action and eliminate the key commanders of ISK, don't you think they have equal obligation when it comes to fulfilling that as per the Doha Accord or the repeated assurance to the international community, their equal obligation towards other terrorist groups, including the TTP or any other for that matter?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, one thing is, because ISK has been posing threats to Taliban administration. So it is basically their enemy number one, because now ISK has been showing we are the only left jihadi group in the region. So, but on the other hand, you are not taking any action against your former allies like Al-Qaeda, TTP, ETIM. So I think it is basically hypocritical, hypocrisy of the Taliban administration that we're only targeting ISK because it basically challenges your administration. Second thing is that it is not only the Moscow format, it was other meetings held in Islamabad and other countries in which China, Pakistan and Central Asian countries, they are repeatedly asking the Taliban administration, not only ISK but also the TTP and ETIM and other militant groups. But I believe that the Taliban administration is afraid that if we take any action against TTP and other militant groups, they could join the ranks of ISK, and it will make another problem for us. So I think it could be a reason, yeah.
So, Mr. Ziaur Rehman, what options are left at the hands of the regional countries, China, Iran, Pakistan and Russia, if the action by the interim Afghan authorities continues to happen against specifically ISK and not against any other terrorist groups? So what options would be left at the hands of regional countries?
I think 2 years has been passed and all neighboring countries have been showing their patience, okay? They know that Afghan people will ultimately suffer if they also stop supporting the Afghan people in the term of economic and humanitarian assistance. So it is a reason that these countries are basically waiting for right time. Otherwise, I think it is not only the Pakistan issue; it is the issue of all regional neighboring countries, region countries, and there should be some more regional response to this issue. Not because if Pakistan do it alone, it will be more repercussion. But if all countries like the Moscow and other these forums, if they do something jointly, it could be very helpful and dreadful.
Mr. Ziaur Rehman, senior journalist, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for being with us on this show. Dr. Attiq Rehman, when we talk about this specific problem, regional countries urging the interim Afghan authorities to take action against all the terrorist groups. So they had been taking concrete action against ISK in particular, eliminating their key commanders, but haven't seen any sort of concrete action against other terrorist groups. So if that particular approach by the interim Afghan authorities continues to happen, what options do you think the regional countries collectively can adopt?
Regional countries need to understand the nature of Afghanistan, of the present Afghanistan, because now presently we see the situation is completely changed. They have learned, so that's why they have learned how to stand in the region and in the extra-regional affairs, the new government of Afghanistan. And that's why people started calling them, when they started the government, people started calling them new Taliban 2.1, something like that. There were a number of titles.
Taliban 2.0, perhaps because of those expectations, the international community had associated with the new version of the Taliban, perhaps presuming that this time around the Afghan Taliban are going to be much different from those who were back in 1996.
Exactly. They came up with new minds, new approach. So that's why they have started building their bilateral relation independently without the help of anyone else. So that's something new. So we need to understand their mindset, how they are operating their country. So the regional country, according to that mindset, the regional countries need to alter their traditional approach. So they need to adopt something which could be very much convincing for the new Afghan government or influential for them, to influence them.
For example, what could that be? What sort of an approach?
The countries having cooperative ties, they need to play a very effective role. We can say the China, we can see, there are a number of countries.
You already mentioned a fact that we need to remind continuously the interim Afghan authorities about the kind of efforts Pakistani authorities had been making over the years. When we specifically talk about the Afghan peace and reconciliation efforts, you mentioned there was Pakistan that brought the two warring parties on the negotiating table, right? So then Pakistan facilitating those Afghan peace and reconciliation process, also the withdrawal of the international troops, and Pakistan has also been hosting millions of Afghan refugees. So if Pakistan has done so much for Afghan people and that hasn't been reciprocated in the same coin. So how do you think any other country could be even closer as compared to Pakistan to the interim Afghan authorities, and they could report the result out of it?
Other countries are not having the issues like India. So Pakistan is having the Indian issue. I mean, presently we are facing a very severe economic crisis internally. So we are not in a position to support economically Afghanistan. On the other hand, India is there, the massive investment, I mean the massive sport, Indian sport is there, Indian involvement is there. So the other countries, they do not have, I mean, any challenge like India. So we are having India, which is containing Pakistan's efforts, which is targeting Pakistan's efforts, because India realized this, a peaceful Afghanistan will be ultimately in favor of Pakistan. So they will not let the efforts of Pakistan's government to achieve the desired results or the desired outcome in Afghanistan. And I was mentioning I mentioned about the Indian unilateralism. They have adopted a new approach to isolate Pakistan in the Muslim world and in the international community. So what they are doing, they have started creating the small alliances, small multilateral alliances, like they have created the COAS, and they have intention to join the AUKUS. And on the other hand, they have converted BRICS into a bigger multilateral forum. Initially it wasn't like that. So they have started creating more space, and that will be very difficult for Pakistan to counter, because all these efforts are just reducing Pakistan's space in the international community. So we are having the Indian counter strategies everywhere. So that's why the situation, the position, Pakistan's position presently is very much critical. The other countries, they do not have issues like India. So that's why all the efforts are not providing us the desired results.
So what I understand is that India is trying to create more space for itself by going into smaller alliances wherever it looks that it could be feasible for it. In turn, reducing that space for Pakistan, trying to do that.
Exactly.
There must naturally be some sort of counter strategy, if that is actually the case, whatever you have sketched right now. So what could possibly be the counter strategy to that?
The counter strategy, the government of Pakistan need to produce more space in the international community, because we need to adopt a counter strategy on the pragmatic grounds. The way India is isolating Pakistan, I do not recommend we should isolate India, because we have a defensive approach.
So, despite its efforts of trying to isolate Pakistan, it hasn't succeeded as such. We have seen Pakistan spearheading a number of international campaigns at the international forum and getting results.
G20 is before us. Kashmir is a disputed area, and the people living under Indian occupation, they are facing miserable condition. But on the other hand, they very successfully invited the G20 mission. I mean the G20 session. So how can we say that India is not successful in implementing its policy plans regarding Pakistan?
Right. Let me bring in General Moin also. General Moin, do you have anything to say regarding this particular observation that has been made by Dr. Attiq?
Yes. In the last few weeks and months, there were positive news coming out of Afghanistan that it has embarked upon a path of big canal, which will bring hectares of land under cultivation, and that they have started exploring petroleum, and that they are already excavating coal and exporting to Pakistan and maybe to other countries. A good positive step is China has opened up its embassy in Kabul. That of course should give them some confidence. But these are positive news. But the presence of these terrorist groups in Afghanistan are going to be a drag, going to be a liability for Afghanistan. So far, for last 40 years, these groups, of course, have thrived. They get money in dollars. That is why plenty of dollars is available in Afghanistan, because all these countries who use these terrorist groups pay them in dollars. So now if Afghanistan goes onto the positive path and allows linkage of the world through its country to Central Asia, which has been a dream of many countries, it will be good for them to go on this path of development. Secondly, one more angle I want to add. The Mastoom attack which has taken place, Mastoom also shares half of district, shares borders with Afghanistan. And before this attack, there was another attack on Hamdullah, the spokesman of the JUI. This area, Balochistan is dominated by the madrasas of Fazlur Rahman, and he has many supporters there. Senator Abdul Ghafoor Haider is from there. So now, after this attack and two attacks, they have started feeling that, like in previous elections, ANP was targeted like this in KPK, and then they decided not to take part in the election because they lost many of their leadership, senior leadership, in such like attacks. So now this thing is going on for elections, and then there are noises already cropping up saying that in these conditions, elections may be difficult in January. So this is another angle which I feel is there. There is another angle which I wanted to add.
Right, General. We'll discuss this aspect, this particular dimension, the possibility if this particular situation doesn't warrant the security is required, of course, for the smooth conduct of polls. Now, when we talk about the appreciation that has come from the regional countries at the end of the Moscow format moot, now options, what options do you think are left at the hands of the regional countries if they want to collaborate on a collective front in order to make the Afghan authorities to do something about the terrorist threat that emanates from the Afghan soil?
The question is to me?
Yes, General, please go ahead.
Yes. Now, there were Soviet forces, very strong in the air. Their helicopters, armed helicopters, were very famous, but they could not control Al-Qaeda others. But in fact, because of that, Al-Qaeda came and took its roots in Afghanistan soil. Then the Americans came with all their satellite intelligence, with their sophisticated equipment and air force, and the NATO forces, very well equipped. But they could not bring peace to Afghanistan. And as the Soviets left, Afghanistan remained in turmoil. It couldn't control its terrorist groups. And after the departure of Americans, there's better conditions than before. But of course, this Daesh and ISK and other groups are operating from there. And I think Taliban have good intelligence. They have their tentacles spread all over Afghanistan. So, I mean, they have to develop some political will to tackle with them. They can't leave them alone like that. And there was a rumor, there was a report actually by the Soviet Union when they were packing, the Americans were packing up from Syria. They said in unmarked planes, Daesh groups are being brought into Afghanistan and through unmarked helicopters being shifted to certain bases. I do not know what is the international game plan for this area and what do they want to achieve. And I hope and pray that Taliban take this matter seriously for the benefit of the region to develop. Thank you.
Lieutenant General retired Moinuddin Haider joining us on Skype, former Federal Interior Minister. Thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we were joined by Dr. Attiq Rehman, expert in international relations. Dr. Attiq, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.